any device designed, made, or adapted to expel a projectile through a barrel by using the energy generated by an explosion or burning substance, or any device readily convertible to that use. In the course of committing theft means conduct that occurs in an attempt to commit, during the commission, or an immediate flight after the attempt or commission of theft. Individual means a human being who is alive. Owner means a person who has title to the property, possession of the property whether lawful or not, or a greater right to possession of the property than the person charged. Person means an individual. Property means tangible or intangible personal property, including anything severed from the land or a document, including money, that represents or embodies anything of value. Possession means actual care, custody, control, or management of the property. The following definition applies to the offense of capital murder. A person acts intentionally or with intent with respect to a result of her conduct when it is her conscious objective or desire to cause the result. A person acts knowingly or with knowledge with respect to a result of her conduct when she is aware that her conduct is reasonably certain to cause the result. A person acts intentionally or with, the following definitions apply to the offense of robbery. A person acts intentionally or with intent with respect to the nature of her conduct or to result of her conduct when it is her conscious objective or desire to engage in the conduct or cause the result. A person acts knowingly or with knowledge with respect to the nature of her conduct or to circumstances surrounding her conduct when she is aware of the nature of her conduct or that the circumstances exist. A person acts knowingly or with knowledge with respect to a result of her conduct when she is aware that her conduct is reasonably certain to cause the result. A person acts recklessly or is reckless with respect to circumstances surrounding her conduct or the result of her conduct when she is aware of but consciously disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that the circumstances exist or that the result will occur. The risk must be of such a nature and degree that its disregard constitutes a gross deviation from the standard of care that an ordinary person would exercise under all the circumstances as viewed from the actor's standpoint. A person is criminally responsible if the result would not have occurred but for her conduct. A person is criminally responsible as a party to an offense if the offense is committed by her own conduct, by the conduct of another for which she is criminally responsible, or by both. Each party to an offense may be charged with the commission of the offense. A person is criminally responsible for an offense committed by the conduct of another if, acting with intent to promote or assist the commission of the offense, she solicits, encourages, directs, aids, or attempts to aid the other person to commit the offense. Mere presence alone does not make one a party to an offense. A person who has been charged with the same offense as the defendant is an accomplice. A conviction cannot be had upon the testimony of an accomplice unless the jury first believes that the accomplice's testimony is true and that it shows the defendant is guilty of the offense charged against her, and even then you cannot convict unless the accomplice's testimony is corroborated by other evidence tending to connect the defendant with the offense charged, and the corroboration is not sufficient if it merely shows the commission of the offense, but it must tend to connect the defendant with its commission. You are charged that Cortes is an accomplice if any offense was committed, and you are instructed that you cannot convict the defendant upon the testimony of Cortes unless you first believe that her testimony is true and that it shows the defendant is guilty as charged in the indictment. Even then, you cannot convict the defendant unless you further believe that there is other evidence in this case outside of the testimony of Cortes tending to connect the defendant with the commission of the offense charged in the indictment, and then from all the evidence you must believe beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. Now, bearing in mind the foregoing instructions, if you unanimously find from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that on or about September the 2nd, 2015, in the county of Dallas, state of Texas, the defendant, Brenda Delgado, did intentionally or knowingly cause the death of Kendra Hatcher, an individual, by employing Kristopher Love to murder Kendra Hatcher for remuneration, or the promise of remuneration, to wit, drugs and United States currency, from defendant in a drug cartel, and pursuant to said agreement, Kristopher Love did intentionally or knowingly cause the death of Kendra Hatcher by shooting her with a firearm, a deadly weapon, and you will find the defendant guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment. Or, if you unanimously find from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that on or about September the 2nd, 2015, in Dallas County, Texas, Kristopher Love did intentionally cause the death of Kendra Hatcher, an individual, by shooting her with a firearm, a deadly weapon, while in the course of committing or attempting to commit the offense of robbery of Kendra Hatcher, and if you further find from the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Brenda Delgado, acting with the intent to promote or assist in the commission of the offense, did solicit, encourage, direct, aid, or attempt to aid Kristopher Love in intentionally causing the death of Kendra Hatcher, then you will find the defendant guilty of capital murder. If you do not so find, or if you have a reasonable doubt thereof, you will acquit the defendant and say by your verdict not guilty. In all criminal cases, the burden of proof is on the state. All persons are presumed to be innocent, and no person may be convicted of an offense unless each element of the offense is proved beyond a reasonable doubt. The fact that a person has been arrested, confined, indicted, or otherwise charged with the offense gives rise to no inference of guilt at her trial. The law does not require a defendant to prove her innocence or to produce any evidence at all. The presumption of evidence alone is sufficient to acquit the defendant unless you are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt of the defendant's guilt after careful and impartial consideration of all of the evidence in the case. The state has the burden of proving the defendant guilty, and it must do so by proving each and every element of the offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden rests upon the state throughout the trial and never shifts to the defendant. If the state fails to meet its burden, then you must acquit the defendant. It is not required that the state prove the defendant's guilt beyond all possible doubt, but it is required that the state's proof excludes all reasonable doubt concerning the defendant's guilt. In the event that you have a reasonable doubt as to the defendant's guilt, after considering all the evidence before you in these instructions, you will acquit her and say by your verdict not guilty. You are instructed that you are not to allow yourself to be influenced in any degree whatsoever by what you may think or surmise the opinion of the court to be. The court has no right by any word or any act to indicate any opinion respecting any matter of fact involved in this case, nor does it indicate any desire respecting its outcome. The court is not intended to express any opinion upon any matter of fact in this case, and if you have observed anything which you have or may interpret as the court's opinion upon any matter of fact in this case, you must wholly disregard it. At times throughout the trial, the court has been called upon to pass on the question of whether or not certain evidence might be properly admitted. Do not be concerned with the reasons for such rulings and draw no inferences from them. Whether offered evidence is admissible is purely a question of law. In admitting evidence to which an objection is made, the court does not determine what weight should be given to such evidence, nor does it pass on the credibility of the witness. As to any offer of evidence that has been rejected by the court, you, of course, must not consider the same. As to any question to which an objection was sustained, you must not conjecture as to what the answer might have been or the reason for the objection. You are instructed that you may consider all relevant facts and circumstances surrounding the alleged killing and the previous relationship existing between the defendant and the deceased, if any, together with all relevant facts and circumstances going to show the condition of the mind of the defendant at the time of the offense alleged in the indictment. You are instructed that the defendant may testify in her own behalf if she elects to do so, but if she elects not to do so, that fact cannot be taken as a circumstance against her or prejudice her in any way. The defendant has elected not to testify, and you are instructed that you cannot and must not refer or allude to that fact throughout your deliberations or take it into consideration for any purpose whatsoever. You are instructed that if there is testimony before you in this case regarding the defendant's having committed an offense other than the offense alleged against her in the indictment in this case, you cannot consider that testimony for any purpose unless you find and believe beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed such offense, if any was committed, and even then you may only consider the same in determining the motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, or state of mind of the defendant, if any, and for no other purpose. It is only from the witness stand that the jury is permitted to receive evidence regarding the case, and no juror is permitted to communicate to any other juror anything he may have heard regarding the case from any source other than the witness stand. In deliberating on this case, you are not to refer to or discuss any matter or issue not in evidence before you, and you are not to talk about this case to anyone not of your jury. Mere sentiment, conjecture, sympathy, passion, prejudice, public opinion, or public feeling is to play no part in your deliberation. You are the exclusive judges of the facts proved, of the credibility of the witnesses, and of the weight to be given in testimony, but you are bound to receive the law from the court and be governed thereby. After you have retired to consider your verdict, no one has any authority to communicate with you except the bailiff who has you in charge. You may communicate with this court in writing, signed by your presiding juror, through the bailiff who has you in charge. Do not attempt to talk to the bailiff, the attorneys, or the court concerning any question you may have. After argument of counsel, you will retire and select one of your members as your presiding juror. It is your presiding juror's duty to vote with you and to preside at your deliberations. Your verdict must be unanimous, and after you have arrived at your verdict, you may use one of the attached forms by having your presiding juror sign a particular form that conforms to your verdict. Signed by me, Tracy Holmes, Judge of the 363rd, and the final page of the verdict forms, and they read as follows. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment, or we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. Mr. Brooks, Mr. Ward, you first.
Please, court.
Thank you, sir.
Counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Generally, when we get to this portion of the trial, we will start off by telling you thank you for your time and attention. The folks at this table, folks at that table, we've been doing this long enough that kind of seems stale to us because we say it so often. But generally, genuinely, I do want to tell you, we want to thank you for your time and attention in this trial. Because we recognize that we bring you down here and we take you away from your daily activities, your normal routine, and we put you in a situation we have to make tough decisions about an individual that you don't know. So we do thank you for your time and attention. Now, on Monday, each side had an opportunity to deliver opening statements. All of you were here and you heard that. On Monday, the defense, in their opening statement, they admitted to you that this woman was stalking Ricardo Paniagua. They admitted that. Remember the salsa classes that she just started showing up to? Remember the jogs on the Katy Trail that she started appearing at the same time he's on the Katy Trail? Remember the restaurant? He's on a date and she shows up. Now, the thing is, they cannot stand here and tell you those things happened because they were in the same neighborhood or they lived close to each other. They can't argue that now because they admitted she was stalking. They admitted she was cyber stalking you. Ask yourself, and you've seen the evidence, why is there a picture of Dr. Paniagua's Social Security card on her phone? Why? Why is there a screenshot of text messages from other people, other women to him on her cell phone? Why are there screenshots of travel receipts, travel arrangements that he's made with other people, places he's going with other people on her phone? Well, we know why. Because they admitted she was cyber stalking. And more importantly, they admitted that she made statements to people that she wanted Kendra Hatcher dead. You have that testimony in front of you. You have that testimony from Kristopher. You have that testimony from Jennifer. You have that testimony from Moses. This offense took place in 2015. And since that time, the word love triangle, or the words love triangle, have often been used when describing what took place. The problem with that is, in a love triangle, those three individuals generally know each other. They generally know that there's something going on amongst the three of them. That beautiful soul, Kendra Hatcher, she didn't know this lady. Dr. Paniagua, he's broken up with her. He's moved on. He's let her know that he has a new girlfriend. He's not in a love triangle. The only person in a love triangle is her. And it's a love triangle she created. Now, they told you Monday, and they intimated throughout the trial, that Crystal Cortes is a liar. In fact, I think the quote is, Crystal Cortes is a liar beyond imagination. Well, guess what? What did you hear Wednesday and Thursday? For over 2 hours, what did you hear? In her interview with Detective Barnes. Who is the liar beyond imagination? The night of this offense, she tells Detective Barnes she's at a Chili's. And after she leaves Chili's, she goes home. But we know that's not true. Because we live in a world now where there's cameras everywhere. And a camera from across the street at Jose's neighbor's house shows her that evening driving up actually driving up and meeting Crystal Cortes, Jose, and they exchange things, and you can see it for yourself. You can see Jose getting her Crystal's son out of the car and putting him in another car. You see her leave. She tell Barnes that? No. She went straight home, according to her. Who's the liar beyond imagination? They told you that you will see every time Crystal gets stuck or confronted with the fact that she can't get across or get past, she blames Brenda. Well, again, Wednesday, Thursday, what did you see? In those several hours with Detective Barnes, every time she got stuck or confronted with a fact that she can't get past, who does she blame it on? Crystal Cortes. You don't have to ask yourself how many times you hear her blame Crystal Cortes. You'll have the evidence for you back there. You can take it and count it for yourself. But it's quite a few times. And you'll notice the pattern. Every time she gets stuck, it's Crystal. You got to talk to Crystal. I don't know. Crystal. You've seen before you the recruitment campaign that she went on to find somebody to either hurt Dr. Paniagua or kill Kendra Hatcher. Moses, I think it's pretty obvious how painful it was for him to be here. I think it's pretty obvious how uncomfortable he was. But that pain and that uncomfortableness are indicators to you of the validity of what he's saying about what she is asking him to do. You heard Jennifer. Jennifer talked about reconnecting. Jennifer talked about all she talked about was Ricardo Paniagua. She talked about being offered money, a car, if she could kill Kendra Hatcher. She tried to recruit Milton. Milton had good sense to shut her down right away. He also had a good sense to tell her, say, look, if we're friends, you don't bring this to me. You don't try and pull me into something like this. That kind of lets you know what she thinks about her friendship with Milton. She asked Roberto, can you help me get a gun? There's one thing about all the individuals that she tries to recruit. You notice that each one of them is at a very low point in their life. Moses is going through a situation with his sister. Jennifer, down on her luck, needs a car, needs money. Crystal, one child, mouth to feed, down on her luck. She is very good at manipulating people when they're at their lowest points in life and roping them into this really ridiculous scheme. In her interview of over 2 hours, she denies that there's a plan. Silencer for a 40. A silencer for a 40 Smith & Wesson. See, their theory was that this is something that Crystal and Kristopher Love just twisted off and did on their own because Dr. Hatcher is wealthy. And they were going to rob her. The problem with their theory, you don't need a silencer to rob somebody. The only time you need a silencer is if you're trying to have somebody killed or you're wanting to kill somebody. That's when you need a silencer. Now, whether they recorded that by accident, whether she recorded it on purpose, I don't know. Really, I kind of hope it was by accident because that means Providence is looking down on her. This didn't have to happen. There's no reason for this to have happened. Dr. Hatcher's not walking down the street and catches a stray bullet. She's not in a store. Somebody walks in to rob the place, you shoot it up. She's not living a lifestyle where she's hanging around people doing the wrong things and gets caught up with them and the wrong things that they're doing. It didn't have to happen. The fact that it did happen is ridiculous. Short period of time, you're going to go back there and you're going to make a decision. When you come back with your decision, I want you to come back with a message. You want the message to her, lady, you're not going home. Kendra Hatcher's home. She's home right now. But she's not home in a manner in which her family can reach out and touch and live and love and express with her. She's home in a box. When you come back with your message to that woman, the message needs to be, lady, you're never going home.
back on May 17th, sent out 2,000 summons. And you and a few hundred of your fellow Dallas County citizens responded. You came down just like you were asked to do. And, you know, in a way, when you came down, it was a little bit unfair for you. Because you were at a disadvantage. You were at a disadvantage because you didn't know what we knew. You didn't know Kendra Hatcher. You didn't know that this was an innocent, sweet woman who basically was the type of person we all want to be. The type of person who dedicates herself to the service of others. For Kendra, it was particularly children. The type of person who we all love, who her family loved, whose lives she touched. How many lives did she touch? It was unfair because you didn't know this. And you know what? It was also unfair because you didn't know who the defendant was. You didn't know that Brenda Delgado was an obsessed stalker, a master manipulator. You didn't know when you came down on the 17th of May that she orchestrated and masterminded a horrifying, sinister, and evil plot to execute Kendra Hatcher. And when you came back on the 31st of May, we had 72 people sitting in this courtroom, if you remember. We went through every single one of you guys, and the reason you 14 are here is because you all told us, you know what, I'm up to this challenge. I can do this. I'm the type of person who will follow my oath and find this defendant guilty if, when, and after we prove it to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Today is the day that we ask you to do what you said you would do. Now, I want to talk about the fact that the overwhelming and clear evidence in this case is the reason Kendra Hatcher is dead is because Brenda Delgado had her executed. There is no other reason. When you ask yourself, why is Kendra Hatcher dead? Why is she no longer with us? Why was she stolen from us? It's because Brenda Delgado had her executed. I want to talk about specifically the things we talked about on the 31st when you guys were all down here. We talked about the laws that apply in this case, and I think what Judge Holmes read to you is nothing new. We talked about all of that, didn't we? You heard about those ways in which Brenda Delgado is charged with having Kendra Hatcher killed. The two ways, either she basically employs Kristopher Love to do it, and he goes and does it, or if she sends Kristopher and Crystal over there to rob and kill her. Either way. Here's the thing, you don't have to spend any time fighting about which one of those you think it is. Once we prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt, either one of those ways, she's guilty. If for some reason any of you have a question, you don't even have to agree among 14 of you. Either way, and she's guilty. If 6 of you think it's remuneration, if 6 of you think it's sending them over there to rob and kill her, she's guilty.
Your Honor, objection. I don't mean to interrupt, but may we approach the bench real fast? I sincerely apologize. Thank you, Your Honor. And I apologize.
So again, what we talked about with those ways of committing capital murder, you've all heard that before. We talked about that on the 31st. I also want to talk to you about something else you heard from Judge Holmes that I promised you would hear. It's that accomplice witness rule. You know, the idea that before you can convict somebody solely on the testimony of a co-defendant, there's got to be something else there that tends to connect the person to the crime. So let's talk about Crystal Cortes, because here's what I suspect. I suspect when Mr. Milner stands up, and the time he has to speak to you, it's going to be all about Crystal Cortes. So let's talk about what we have to do in order for you to rely on her testimony. There has to be corroboration. Let's go through that. Let's start with the witnesses you heard from. Moses Martinez. Now, you remember him? As Mr. Brooks told you, he did not want to get up here and testify against his cousin. Now, Mr. Milner's not going to stand up here and call him a liar. He can't. He can't call him a liar. Moses has no reason to lie and make this up. You know what you're going to hear, don't you? Oh, well, Brenda was drunk. She's just popping off. She's just kind of talking smack. Yeah, she's talking smack about taking this bat, having Moses take this bat to Kendra and Ricky. Who jokes about that? Who jokes about doing something like that? You also heard from Jennifer Calderon. You know, and what do you notice at this point? See, sequentially, in our time frame, first she goes to her cousin and says, hey, will you help me out with this? Well, then she realizes he's not going to go for that. Now she goes to Jenny Calderon. Well, to get Jenny to do this, now she's offering something. Money, a car, some drugs. Now, you know what Mr. Miller is going to say about that? Oh, well, Jenny's in this drug-induced coma. She can't remember anything. You can't rely on her. Well, tell you what, do you think the fact that Brenda had already gone to her cousin to get him to take a bat to Kendra, do you think that tends to show that Jenny's right, that she's telling you the truth? You think all this starts to corroborate what Crystal Cortes is telling you? And then let's move to Jose Ortiz, you know, the owner of the Jeep. Now, what he told you is the night after Kendra was executed, that Brenda was asking him to paint the Jeep and to get rid of it. Do you believe him? Do you believe he has any reason to make that up? Of course not. Now let me tell you something. Mr. Milner didn't even ask him a single question on cross-examination. You know why? Because how's he going to challenge his credibility? Why is the defendant asking Milton Martinez to paint and get rid of that Jeep the night of the murder? Let's talk about Roberto Menendez. He came in here and told you about the exchange providing her with the BMW. I don't think Mr. Milner is even going to get up here and tell you he's not telling you the truth. Let's talk about Milton Martinez. I mean, you know, you guys are the judges of credibility, and in doing so, you get to see people on the witness stand. You get to see how they react. Now, Milton Martinez did not want to say what he had to say. He didn't want to face her and have to tell you guys what she did. But she asked him to get rid of Brenda, to get rid of Kendra. Is there any reason you wouldn't believe him? I don't know what Mr. Milner can say about that. There's no reason he would make that up. If there was, don't you think you would have heard it? And finally, I want to talk about, in terms of corroboration of Crystal Cortes, I want to talk about the defendant's own statement. I want to talk about this for just a second, because here's the thing. What you're going to hear, just as Mr. Brooks told you, you're going to hear about all the lies that Crystal said. And then I want you to ask yourself, while he's telling you all those lies that she said, he's going to point them out one by one. Just ask yourself this simple question. Why is she lying? It's because she's guilty. It's because she did it. She is responsible for Kendra Hatcher's death. That's why she's lying. And the thing is, Brenda Delgado is doing exactly the same thing. Lies, lies, and repeated lies. Because she's guilty. Innocent people don't lie. Innocent people don't walk in when a police detective is asking them questions and lie to them about things they have no other reason to other than the fact that they're guilty. You know, I want to point out a couple of specific things. You know, one of the Detective Barnes, when they first started talking, what he said was, "What were you doing the day of the murder?" You know what was really interesting is that Brenda starts out by telling you what she was doing, and the day starts at noon. The day started at noon, and then it moved forward. Now, why do you think she wasn't telling Detective Barnes what she was doing that morning? By the way, he called her on it. Wait a minute, what happened that morning? What happened that morning is that she was at Jack in the Box with Cortes and Kristopher Love. At 10:30 in the morning, the three of them were there, and you know very well what they were doing. Finalizing this unbelievable plot to kill Kendra Hatcher. Why do you think Brenda Delgado left that part out? Now, I want to talk about these records too, because you know, the defense called that expert witness up there to come talk to you, and I think you noticed that when Mr. Milner asked him questions, he was very forthcoming and ready to answer his questions. He didn't seem to treat me the same way, and I don't really know why. But one of the things he did admit to you guys on cross-examination was that these records are accurate. Their own expert says this is correct. Their own witness says that. Now, I also want to point out something else that their own expert told you. There were 99 phone calls between Crystal and Brenda from August 22nd to September 4th. And I asked him about that one phone call. One phone call on September 2nd. Remember, he converted that time for you. That was September 2nd at 8:31 p.m. 45 minutes after the murder. Brenda Delgado got a call from Crystal Cortes, and she deleted that phone call from her phone. Why? Why? 99 phone calls, the one 45 minutes after the murder, she deletes it. The answer is because she's guilty. There is no other explanation for that. You also saw some text messages. Moving forward, you saw a text message on the 4th at about 10:38 a.m. It says, "We are all clear. Call me." FR means for real. We're all clear. Call me. She deleted that message. Why? Because she's guilty. Today is the day that justice is finally served. We rely on you to bring the justice that Kendra deserves, that her family deserves, and that everybody whose lives she's touched deserves. And I ask you to come back with that verdict of guilty. Thank you.
May I have a few minutes to Sorry, may I have a few minutes to gather exhibits? Sure. Your Honor, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, My name's Marlo Kadedu, and you've seen me sitting over here. You may not remember who I am from the first day of trial, but I, along with Mr. Milner, represent Brenda Delgado in this matter. It's been a few days, but I'm sure you'll remember how on the first day of trial, when Mr. Milner gave his opening statement, he talked to you about how you should consider the evidence in this case. He talked to you about how you were going to see evidence in this case that was presented to you by the government in a way that was, by the state, in a way that was designed to inflame your passion, to inspire emotion in you. And he asked you to set that emotion aside and told you that that's your duty to do that in deciding this case. Mr. Milner asked you to do that not just because it's what he wants, but it's because that's your sworn duty as jurors. You heard the judge instruct you, and I'm going to remind you again of the part that's relevant here that she said. The instructions that you've been given and are required to follow say, mere sentiment, conjecture, sympathy, passion, prejudice, public opinion, and public feeling are to play no part in your deliberations. Now, unfortunately, the way the evidence has been presented to you by the state has been designed to do exactly that. And let's talk a little bit about how that is. You'll recall that, let me just say this. Everybody agrees that Dr. Hatcher was murdered. There's no dispute. There's no dispute about how it happened or where it happened. But you still had to see, the state presented to you pictures of Dr. Hatcher's body in the garage with her blood pooling and draining down the garage floor. The only purpose of that evidence, the only evidentiary purpose of that is to inflame you, to make you decide with your emotion instead of thinking and deciding based on reason. Everybody agrees that Kristopher Love shot Dr. Hatcher and that the bullet and the shooting caused her death. And yet, you had to see a demonstration of how a gun works. You had to see gruesome autopsy photos of Dr. Hatcher's body and the injuries that bullet caused. The only purpose of that evidence, the only evidentiary purpose, no one disputes that that's how she died. The only purpose of that is to make you decide this case based on emotion. And I'm sure none of you will forget that the state began its case by bringing Dr. Hatcher's mom to sit here on the stand and talk to you about how it felt as a mother to find out that she'd lost her daughter. That evidence, that testimony is designed to elicit your sympathy, and it's understandable that it does, but your instructions tell you that you cannot decide this case based on sympathy. What you have to decide this case on, what we've asked you to decide this case on, is facts. So let's talk a little bit about facts. In his opening statement, Mr. Milner told you that how this police investigation began was with gut feelings and accusations. And those gut feelings and accusations led the police very, very quickly to a theory that they had about this case and how it happened, how this murder happened. That was really just based on this conjecture and gut feeling. And then they went about finding the evidence, finding information that they could use that would buttress the conclusion that they'd already made about this evidence. And you got to see a graphic display of that. You saw 5 hours of Detective Barnes telling Brenda Delgado exactly how it was that this all went down. He had decided that on day 2. That's day 2 after the murder, ladies and gentlemen. He's telling Brenda Hatcher, you're the one who used Crystal Cortes. You're the one who paid somebody to do this murder. You're the one who's got all these motives. He's telling her that on day 2, and he's telling her that before he's looked at any phones, before he's executed warrants, before he's gotten phone records, before he's even decided that he's got probable cause to arrest Brenda Delgado. He's already decided what his theory of the case is. But he's done that. He's decided what happened 3 full years before Crystal Cortes came in and told the state the story that she told you from the jury box here. She didn't tell you the story. She didn't tell them the story that it was a contract-killing murder for hire until 3 years after the murder. The first time she ever said that to anybody was September 21st, 2018. But he's already decided it, Detective Barnes, back on day 2 of the investigation, and so everything he looked at was designed and intended to support that conclusion. So I want to talk to you for a second about some of the things that don't make any sense or that are contradicted by other evidence in the case. I want to talk to you about these facts. First of all, let's talk about planning. Crystal Cortes testified that she and Brenda Delgado planned this offense together for 2 full weeks, that they surveilled Kendra Hatcher's place of business, and that they went every day. You remember that testimony. Every day they went to her apartment complex, and they drove in, and they went into the garage, and they sat there and they looked at the traffic. They planned it, they surveilled it, they spent all this time planning to commit this murder. Now, someone who's casing out a parking lot every day for 2 weeks, planning a murder, is going to know where the exit is. You're not going to case out an apartment building for 2 weeks and then be confused on the day of the murder that you've been planning and rehearsing. You're not going to be confused about where the exit is. That just doesn't make any sense. Someone who's cased a parking lot for 2 weeks planning to commit a murder would have noticed surveillance cameras at the entrance of the parking area and would have decided to do it somewhere else. It's just inconsistent with 2 weeks of planning and 2 weeks of surveillance. You heard testimony, that the gun magazine was found on the floor in the garage close to Dr. Hatcher's body. And so people who have been planning an execution-style murder for weeks, who have rehearsed it, who've actually gone through and done dry runs, they're not going to eject accidentally the gun magazine on the floor of the garage where they've committed the murder in a panic and run away and leave it. That is inconsistent with this notion of planning and dry runs of this offense. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about this bargain basement assassin concept. Crystal Cortes testified that she agreed to commit a murder, that she met someone and 2 weeks later had agreed to commit a murder for that person for $500. You heard Mr. Milner go through all the math on that. That came out, if you add up all the hours that she spent on that, that comes out to about $10 an hour. $10 an hour. It's barely above minimum wage. It just does not make any sense that someone would agree to commit a murder for which they could go get the death penalty for $500. Similarly, she testified that Kristopher Love agreed to commit this murder for some indeterminate amount of money and drugs. No one ever talked about how much it was going to be. He just sort of did it on the come. You know, he's going to get some amount of money and drugs down the road. When you sell a couch on Craigslist, you know how much money you're going to get. No one is going to agree to commit a murder for which they could get the death penalty, not knowing how much money they're going to get at the end. It just does not make any sense. In terms of planning, Crystal Cortes told you that she agreed to commit this murder, and that the plan, she didn't have a backup plan, but that Brenda Delgado told her she was just going to run off to Mexico if there was a problem, that she said that before the murder. Who would agree to commit a murder for someone who says, hey, if we get caught and there's any heat, I'm going to run away to Mexico and I'm going to leave you here to take the heat? No one is going to agree to do that in advance. It just is inconsistent with this idea that she was paid in advance and that the plan all along was some sort of contract killing. Let's talk about Jennifer Escobar's testimony for a second. Jennifer Escobar testified that she was offered money and a car to eliminate Dr. Hatcher. I think that's what she said. And she told you that she agreed to that. She was down for that. She continued living with Brenda Delgado even after that offer was made, that she thought that that was fine. But then she also told you that when she went away on vacation and she came back and Brenda Delgado went through her suitcase, well, that was just a bridge too far. I mean, does that really make sense? You're down for killing somebody, that's okay, but you're going to move out because they went through their luggage. That just undermines her credibility and undermines what she's saying about this supposed plan. Speaking of Jennifer, you also heard testimony from Milton Martinez that Brenda Delgado brought Jennifer in to the car dealership where he worked and helped her to buy a car. The purpose of that was to help her buy a car, which she did in January or February of 2015. Now that's 4 months before Ricky Paniagua starts dating Dr. Hatcher. 4 months she's helping her to buy a car. So why would it be that she would be offering to help her buy another car, to get her another car, in August, 6 months after she's just helped her voluntarily buy a car in January or February? It just is inconsistent with her story. Other inconsistent and illogical things that are not supported by the evidence. Crystal Cortes testified that she and Kristopher Love, after the murder, took the Jeep, and they took cleaning supplies and gloves, and they thoroughly cleaned the car. And I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of that testimony was, but I think it was to try to make the fact that Brenda Delgado had, when her car was searched, there were latex gloves in the car, because even though she's a dental hygienist doing clinical practice and studies, that's somehow something that somehow should indicate her guilt. So they take this car, this Jeep, and they clean off all the fingerprints, according to her, and then she gets back in the car that she's just cleaned the fingerprints off, supposedly, the steering wheel and the handle, car door, window, all of that. And she drives to her grandmother's house and picks up her son, her 6-year-old son, and puts him in the back seat. So now we've got her son's fingerprints and DNA all over this car that she's supposed to be cleaning up. And that just, again, her story just does not hang together, and it's inconsistent with common sense and with other evidence that you've seen in this case. So I want to talk to you about the silencer video that you saw, and you'll notice that they didn't actually play the video, they just gave you a screenshot. That may be because that was videotaped from the passenger side of the car. They also talked to you about the selfie. Remember the selfie where Crystal Cortes holds up the camera and she takes a picture, and there's a woman she says is Brenda Delgado. I mean, you can't positively identify anyone in that picture, just like you can't positively identify anyone from those little white blobs that you see on that surveillance video that's across the street from Jose's case. I mean, Crystal says who people are and what they're doing, but I defy anyone to look at that videotape and actually identify anyone or what they're doing. So she takes the selfie when the person she's taking the selfie, the other person she's taking the selfie of, it's looking away from the camera, so they're not seeing that she's taking it. And she takes a picture of the money, and she does that after the murder. Now, let me ask you a question. Who, after they commit a capital murder who, after they commit a capital murder, creates evidence against themselves with a co-conspirator and of the money that they got paid to do the capital murder? Who does that? They're creating evidence against yourself. The only reason you're going to do that, the only reason you're going to take a video on somebody else's phone, the only reason you're going to take that selfie of the money and of the other woman is to set her up. That was the goal of those pictures. Think about it. Why else would she do that? So, some other inconsistent things. You heard from Angelica Gordon that the woman she says was in a meeting with Kristopher Love and with Crystal Cortes, that she says was Brenda Delgado, didn't speak any English. You got to hear 5 hours, 4 hours maybe, of Brenda Delgado speaking perfect English. I just don't know what else to say about that. Now this is important. The state has told you over and over again, indeed again this morning, that Brenda Delgado had screenshots of Ricky's accounts on her phone. Screenshots. Screenshots of his email account, screenshots of his text messages, screenshots of his confirmations from restaurants. And I'd like you to take a look at those with me. Here's one of them. This, I think, is a screen. I can't really even see this, if you can, but it's some sort of receipt. Let's see if you can see that one. Let's look at, you know what? Here we go. That's a restaurant reservation. I'm gonna use this one here. This is a set of text messages that they say is a screenshot. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look closely at that picture. That is not a screenshot. That is a photograph of a phone. She was not cyber stalking him. She was with him when she took those pictures. And maybe it's an invasion of his privacy, but they were together. They were together. This was not cyber stalking. Now, there are some screenshots of Find My iPhone locations. There are two of those. One has no date. The other one is dated May 24th of 2015. So that is the latest date of any of those pictures, except for the picture, the very latest date is the picture of Ricky and Dr. Hatcher together. That's his public Facebook picture. And if you look at that, that's actually a picture of a computer screen, if you look closely at that one. The latest, that date is June 15th of 2015. So once he's dating Dr. Hatcher, there are no more screenshots of the Find My iPhone. There isn't any more of that. There isn't any more photographs of his phone. There isn't any more of what they claim is this cyber stalking. Once he's dating her, that just doesn't happen. They're trying to imply to you that those things mean that she was stalking him all the way through this relationship, and they just don't have any evidence of that. They have the burden of proof, and the evidence does not support that. Now, okay, so I've talked to you about some of the inconsistencies or things that don't make any sense about the story that Crystal Cortes has told you and that the government has adopted. I mean, they're riding that horse as far as they can ride it. Now I want to talk to you about evidence they could have brought you to corroborate your story and didn't. You heard Crystal Cortes talk about how Brenda Delgado wanted to buy this, I think a Mitsubishi Galant, to be the getaway vehicle, and that she gave a check to some people and asked them to hold it. That was, I guess, some sort of Craigslist listing or something like that. Where are those people? Why aren't they here to testify that that's what happened? They're just not. They could have brought them to you and they didn't. What about Kelly Ellis? Remember this guy? This is Kelly Ellis right here. We heard about Kelly Ellis from several witnesses, and Kelly Ellis was supposed to have been part of the initial planning of this contract killing. He's supposed to have known about it and been part of the initial planning, and then at some point during the planning process, they get rid of him because they say he's got a big mouth. Okay, so what better witness for the state than a guy who was a part of the original planning and who knows that it was a contract killing supposedly from the very beginning and who can't keep his mouth shut and loves to talk? What better witness? Where is he? You didn't hear him. He didn't come here and corroborate Crystal Cortes' story. Okay, so maybe you say, well, people can't be found, or they move, or, whatever, they can't come. But there's some evidence that they could have brought you that they have, inarguably, that they could have shown you that would have corroborated their story, and they didn't. And I want to talk to you about that because it's really important. Crystal Cortes sat up there in the witness stand and told you about this surveillance. We talked about it already. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. She and Brenda Delgado are following Dr. Hatcher around. They go to the Smile Zone where she works. They go to her apartment. They spend hours doing this. They sit every day in that apartment complex. They go every day to her business, and they sit in that parking lot in the, I forget what it was, across the street, Salvation Army, I think it was. So they do that for days. You also heard from our phone expert that the state obtained, and we had because they gave it to us, all of the phone records from the providers for Crystal Cortes from August 23rd, 2015 through September the 4th, and for Kristopher Love, those same dates, the 23rd through the 4th, and from Brenda Delgado from August the 2nd through September the 5th. Okay, so they have all these records, and they have all the phone location, the cell tower location data for all three of these phones for those periods of time. Anytime you use your phone, anytime you open an app and it uses data, anytime you receive or send a text, anytime you receive or send a call, it's going to ping on one of these towers and it shows up in those records. So we have 2 full weeks, allegedly, of this surveillance. Did they bring you? I mean, we had some location maps. You've seen those. You've seen what those look like, and they show you that that Brenda Delgado and Crystal Cortes are up by Jose's shop where they were dropping off a car on the morning of the murder, which no one disputes. I mean, that's undisputed. And then they showed you a couple that show that Brenda is actually down off of 67, down close to to Kristopher Love's apartment building. They don't show you any location data for Kristopher Love or for Crystal Cortes that says that they were there at the same time, but they show you that, that map. Here's what they don't show you. Here's what you don't see. You don't see a single map that shows that Brenda Delgado is sitting in the apartment building casing it out, or a single map that shows that she's at the Smile Zone casing it out. You don't see any maps that show that the two of them are together. Do you think that if there were evidence in those 2 weeks before the murder that they had that showed the two of them together casing out either one of those spots, don't you think you'd see it? I promise you'd see it if it existed. So the reason you don't have it, the reason you haven't seen it, is because it doesn't exist.
You've used half your time, Ms. Kennedy.
How much?
You've used half.
Which is how much?
22 and a half.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you briefly, very briefly, because I need to leave some time for poor Mr. Milner, about emotion again. And I want to talk to you about a really kind of disturbing thread that has run through the state's evidence. You heard the prosecution ask Ricky questions about whether Brenda Delgado got pregnant with his baby and whether they had an abortion, whether they agreed to an abortion of that child. You heard Detective Barnes testify from the witness stand that Brenda Delgado was hugging her chest in the witness room and leaning forward, and she was pushing her breasts up to seduce him somehow or to influence him. You heard the prosecutor, you saw him stop the video and point out that she was putting on lipstick in the room. You saw him, you heard him ask a question about her closet. Did she have a lot of clothes in her closet? Yes, was the answer to that. So let's just and you also heard Detective Barnes give that horrifying speech in the video itself about how a woman in her 30s is losing her looks and she can't get a man and she's going to end up this dry, wasted hag of a woman because she's going to be ugly and old. I mean, never mind. Can't even talk about that. But let's talk about what this evidence really is. Let's call a spade, okay? They wanted you to know she had an abortion because they want you to think that a woman who had an abortion would kill somebody. They want you
I'm going to object to that. Good proper argument.
Sustained.
According to the state, a woman who's hugging her breasts and leaning forward isn't cold. She's using her body to try to influence the police officer. A woman who puts on lipstick in the room isn't doing it because her lips are chapped. It's because she's a seductress, and she's trying to use her feminine wiles. A woman in her 30s without a man better hurry up and get married because otherwise she's going to end up a dried up old hag. That's the message that they're trying to send with this evidence. That isn't evidence, that's slut shaming. And that doesn't have any part, should not have any part in your deliberations. Mr. Milner asked you to consider facts and facts only. I asked the same. And now I will hand it over to him. Thank you.
Again, Your Honor.
You may.
Your Honor, may it please the court, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We all kind of informally, if you will, met about 3 weeks ago today in the big room. Then again last week in this room. When we got down to in this room, I asked each one of you, will you give me your word that you will presume Brenda Delgado innocent? Each one of you gave me your word, and Brenda and I believed you. I asked you, would you give me your word that you will not consider the indictment as evidence? And you said yes, and you gave me your word. And Brenda and I believed you. I asked, will you, and each of you, regardless of the fact that we are all human, but can you overcome emotion knowing what the charge was? That's all you knew at the time. Can you put emotion aside and judge the case based solely upon reason? And you said and gave me your word, and I believed you. You would not be here if you didn't. We started literally, if you will, with about 2,000. And from there it was narrowed down to about 450-ish. And from 450 we got down to about 80. And from 80 we got to a jury of 12. And I asked every single one of you, will you give me your word that you will hold the state to beyond a reasonable doubt and that you will not convict on anything less than beyond a reasonable doubt? And each of you gave me your word, and Brenda and I believed you. So here we are. I said in the beginning, when Monday, 4 days ago, I said there is a problem when you get a gut feeling. I asked a little bit about this in the jury selection, but when you get a gut feeling, the problem is when you get it, everything you see tends to confirm it. I brought up the example of if you had to get your air conditioner replaced or repaired, then an opening statement, when I start talking about what we're really going to talk about, that's the problem. Police officers are as human as me or you or anyone in this courtroom. We all do this. There was a juror, he did not make it, but he talked about subconscious bias. It was very interesting because he was an intellectual type, and he brought up, well, consciously, and I don't mean to, but it's an interesting point that he brought up. That's from a juror. I don't even know what the man does for a living. But a juror said, there is always a subconscious bias. And Detective Barnes, as diligent as he is, as decent and as tenacious as he is no less human than any of you. And he got a gut feeling. He got that gut feeling on the afternoon of September 4, 2015. He got that gut feeling less than 48 hours after this occurred. And you don't have to take my word from it. He laid out his gut feeling very clearly on that videotape. The whole thing, if you will, though, assumes one premise, the foundational premise, and that is that Crystal Cortes would never act upon her own to go rob somebody. That she wouldn't do it just on her own. She had no motive. Ms. Delgado had motive. Crystal had no motive. Tell that to the family of a 7-Eleven clerk that gets his brains blown out for $20. You think that guy didn't have motive? We sit and ask, who in their right mind walks into a store and kills a man for what they keep in the register when they got signs everywhere you look that say, attendant does not keep more than $20 in the register. Yet it still happens. I don't know why people do what they do. I don't know why Crystal did what she did. I think we all know she's a fairly despicable human being. But the point, though, is who knows what is making Crystal tick. And one thing that was excluded, one possibility that was excluded from the very beginning, from less than 48 hours after the murder, a possibility that was excluded from consideration was the fact that Crystal Cortes could possibly have acted on her own. She goes and recruits Kristopher Love on her own. How'd she find him? I was going down to Grandma's house and Kelly Ellis was at my house. I've known him for about 6 years. We used to live next door to each other. Okay, fine. And she's kind of living with her grandmother, near as we can tell. When you go down to the home where you live, and there's a man from another neighborhood that at one time was your next door neighbor, and he's there visiting your grandmother, and he's got Kristopher Love, and Kristopher Love has his children, you're close. If I went home to my mother's house here today, and somebody was there, it would be somebody close. I doubt very seriously I could ever walk in to my old house and see my mother and see anybody in that house that I didn't know pretty well. That's supposedly where this gets hatched up. So all of this, let me talk about something too. This is important. Y'all heard the deal that Crystal got. what I characterize as a deal of the century, one that would make a Wall Street banker get excited. You heard that she was facing either the death penalty or life without parole, and she pleads to murder, where she's subject to the parole laws and gets a 35-year sentence. And I made very clear, when she constructs and gets this deal in September 21 of 2018, so 9 months ago from right now, that what she knew then, when she went into the negotiations with the attorneys for the state, she knew she was in the trap. I asked her, they said, they had you. They told you? She said, yes. And we went in a little bit of the evidence. You've seen it. They had her in the trap. I asked her further, did you know then that they had Kristopher Love in the trap? Did they specifically find the gun in his car and have him on a recorded telephone conversation talking about that gun? She said yes. She knows all about this case. What do you think in jail she's been thinking about the last 3-4 years? She knew all about that. Then they want to say, well, we didn't need Crystal Cortes to make this case. We could make this case without Crystal. That is not true. And your common sense, you know it's not true. They didn't give her something for nothing. Nobody gets something for nothing. Life doesn't work that way. They gave her the chance, and you have heard, and no matter what happens between her and the parole authorities, that woman will walk out of prison before she is as old as I am, and I'm not that old. She will walk out of prison to go live her life. So she got the deal of a century. So what would she do? I mean, what are you willing to do? They've got you, you're in jail, and they own you. You've heard, you kind of know enough about her. What would she do? What would she say? What would that woman be willing to do to get out of the trap and someday have hope and know that I will have a life? I will be older, but far from dead, and I will be as free as everybody in this jury box. There is nothing that woman would do. So how much do you trust her? Do we go back in that jury room and say, look around you, you guys, how much do I trust Crystal Cortes? Think of something important to you, some property that matters to you, something important, nothing crazy. Would you trust Crystal Cortes with it? Pick anything. From a car down to some small item that has sentimental value to you, something that matters to you. Because there's a lot at stake in a criminal courtroom, particularly when the stakes are as high as life without parole. Would you trust her with anything that you cared about? I'll give you one for dog lovers, mine. If I was in a park and I was walking my dog, and knowing everything you know about Crystal now, and I needed to go to the bathroom, and there's a public park, little bathroom over there in the park, would I say to Crystal Cortes, would you hold the leash of my dog Winston for just 3 minutes while I run right there to the bathroom? I need to go to the bathroom. Would you even ask Crystal Cortes and trust her to hold the leash of your dog for a couple of minutes? And the answer is no. You wouldn't trust her if it mattered to you. But the state of Texas asks you to believe her, to believe what she says, and to believe it beyond a reasonable doubt. And you wouldn't trust her to hold the leash of a dog. She admitted in cross-examination that the general theme, if you will, her words were most of the time, that she would
Your Honor, I'm going to object to them showing portions of the trial testimony. Or from reading from trial testimony.
Rest assured, I remember. In any event, she said that most of the time she would turn and blame it on Brenda. She said she didn't have a backup plan, that Crystal's plan was to go to Mexico. Well, that's not true, because if Crystal's plan to go to Mexico, if Brenda's plan was to go to Mexico, then when the police said, would you come down voluntarily, as they said, she would have declined and gone to Mexico. According to the woman who now knows all of the facts, who has testified in Kristopher Love's trial. She knows everything. She knows about going down to Mexico. Brenda didn't go to Mexico until after all of the things that Detective Barnes said to her. Do you think anybody's going to believe you? Nobody. Who in the world would believe you? Goes on for hours. How scared do you think Brenda Delgado was when they took her away on a traffic ticket warrant? She pays the ticket, she gets out of jail. She was sitting in jail for however long it was. What do you think she's thinking about there? She's in there 5 hours with this police detective who's getting kind of animated at the end, but point being, nobody's going to believe you. Who would believe you? Nobody could believe that. Then they take you to jail. You sit there, I think he said, until 9:59 p.m. the following day. What in the world? She's not thinking about that traffic ticket. She's sitting there. The police have said, oh, and by the way, I happen to know that I told everybody but Santa Claus that I would like to hurt, kill, or eliminate Ricky. I would like to hurt, kill, or eliminate Dr. Hatcher, or any combination of the two. I have told all these people all these things, and now the police are sitting there, and Crystal Cortes did this. I asked you in jury selection, how much faith do you really have in our criminal justice system? Yeah, I have to find that in the morning, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
How much faith would you have? The policeman has told you all of these things. Then Crystal says that she didn't have a backup plan. That is absurd. This is Crystal Cortes' backup plan. Why is she taking selfies? Why is she creating evidence? Why does she take a picture that is supposedly her and Brenda? Why does she do any of these things? Because if it goes down, who would think anything but Brenda Delgado did this? She was with her. I heard her tell people all these things. They're not going to blame me. I don't have any motive to do anything to Dr. Hatcher, but Brenda sure does. Who's making the recording about a silencer? We know that the phone is physically on the passenger side of the vehicle.
Objection, Your Honor, we don't know that.
Take a look at it. You can see the viewpoint of it. Whose voice is it? It is Cortes' voice. I asked her, one of the last questions I asked her, is it true? And I tell you this, if you're in dispute as to some point of testimony, tell us, court read it back. Isn't it true that given what you knew, people would believe that Brenda did this and not you? She said, well, they might have. And she said that toward the end of my cross-examination. Thank you, Your Honor. She says, to this day, I don't know what a cartel is. Cell phones. She says, we went down to Waxahachie. Y'all saw the cell phone maps. On the night of the murder, we went down to Waxahachie. If that's true, between those two cell phones, Waxahachie, Texas is 35 miles south. Now, we see all these pings, and I said, well, you could be at Water Rock Lake, you could be almost to Love Field, whatever. Y'all saw it. Point though, there'd be no reason to be 35 miles south in both those cell phones. Either they're hitting data, they're hitting SMS, the text messaging, or they're hitting a voice on either one of those phones. If those phones tag 35 miles south of Dallas, then we know for a fact that it's not because they live in the general area of downtown Dallas. It is not any of that. It's down in Waxahachie. And it did not happen because she's lying to you. The reality here is, y'all are going to go from this place. Y'all may have gotten to know each other a little bit. It is a big case. It is an important case. You've been sort of at this now for about 3 weeks. You spent all week here listening to us. You go back in that jury room, you're going to be talking to one another. Here's the reality. Someday, at some point in time, you will go from this courtroom. You will leave here. And you will retry this case in your mind. This may be the only time you ever serve on a jury in your lives. But you will go from this courtroom and you will go back and you will live your life. You'll do what you do. You'll think about whatever you're doing on a day. But there will come times in a bored moment in life, maybe you're stuck in traffic, maybe it's a bored day at work, or maybe you're just home. And you will retry this case in your mind and you will think then, did I do the right thing? Was my verdict correct? Did I do right when I sat in judgment of Brenda? The law presumes she's innocent and says that she gets the benefit of the doubt. Did I do that? Because then, it may be 6 months from now, it may be years from now, you will go back and you will retry this case in your mind. And you will not then be able to come back to now and undo a mistake if you make it. There is no do-over if you get the wrong verdict here. They have not proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt. There are too many holes in Crystal Cortes' testimony. No conviction can be laid upon that. And you know she lied to you again when she said the cell phone broke about a week before. We know that's not true. The SIM card can't be exchanged. We know that's not true. She changed physical phones on the day of the police interview, and the police records unequivocally prove it. What they unequivocally prove is that she is still lying to you today, and her story is still evolving almost 4 years after the murder of Dr. Hatcher. The evidence here shows that there is clear reasonable doubt, and under our law that means not guilty. I ask you to find Brenda Delgado not guilty because under our law and the evidence, she is not guilty. Thank you.
How much time do I have left?
About 20 minutes.
Thank you. May I please report?
You may.
Counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past almost 4 years, I have tried this case over and over and over again in my head, and every time I try it in my head over and over and over again, she comes up guilty. Every time. And when you are bored, and when you are thinking of this day, and the day that you brought justice to Dallas County, you too will know that you were right. You will know that you were called upon. You were asked to do your duty. So many people are summoned down here. So few get to sit where you sit. So few are right for this case. The 12 of you who will return this verdict will send a loud message that will put this individual where she deserves to be, locked up for the rest of her life. You will have no doubts about that. There are no doubts. They want us to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. I'll do you one better. We've proved this beyond all doubt. Beyond all doubt. And you all know it. All you have to do is do your duty and to sign the proper verdict form. They believed you on certain things in voir dire. We asked every single one of you if the evidence proved that an individual committed the offense of capital murder, would you be able to return that verdict knowing that the individual would receive a life without parole sentence? And every single one of you said yes. Those 2,000 people or the 400 people or the 80 people, some of them couldn't do it, and they're not with you. You are the right people at the right moment in time to finally bring closure to a family that deserves it, and to finally bring justice for an innocent victim. You know, when we started talking about this case, and you got to see the evidence, I don't know where you were, but I know where I was when I heard the why. Do you remember? Do you remember when Detective Barnes goes in there? They want to talk about his gut feeling. Do you really remember? Did you hear what was going on through this? We didn't make a big point of this, okay? His gut feeling was that Ricky was involved. Remember that? Remember those questions about him? Well, you were asking for Ricky for his phone. That was before talking to her. And he didn't want to give you your phone. And you were questioned about that. And suspect. Was Ricky a suspect? Everybody's a suspect. When these things happen, who's the first suspect? The boyfriend. Right? He mentioned that. He mentioned that in his opening statement. Usually, when these things happen, it's the boyfriend killing the new lover or something like that, or the lovers are killing each other, right? Ladies and gentlemen, when I'm usually standing up here in front of some people, there's usually some reasons why these things happen, and that's what we want to know, the why. We bring 12 people down here who are not like the individuals who sit at that table. You all aren't like those people, because if you were, you wouldn't be able to sit here. And so what we're trying to do is to let you know that, yes, that is a human being over there, but they are different from us. They are different from the types of people who walk this earth and are not capable of taking innocent lives. But it's hard. It is hard for 12 of us to sit there, good, honest, hardworking, loving people, humans, respectful of each other. It's hard for us to say, how can this happen? Usually, I'm standing up here talking about greed. 7 deadly sins, greed, right? Greed usually is what's motivating these things. It motivated Kristopher Love. That's his deadly sin. Greed. Money. Drugs. Easy way. Right? Crystal Cortes, $500? Does that make sense? No, it really doesn't. It doesn't make sense for $3,000 or whatever Kristopher Love got. That doesn't make sense. How much would it take for you to kill someone? How much? How much would it take you? $1,000? $2,000? $1 million? Would you kill an innocent person for $1 million? No, because you are different than other individuals. The guy who goes in for 20 bucks at 7-Eleven, he's different than we are. But that's their deadly sin, greed. I don't think Crystal's is greed. There is a deadly sin of lust. Right? Lust. She desired to be with Brenda. Now, maybe not in a sexual sense, but that wanting, that deadly sin is Crystal. She said, I showed loyalty to her in such a short amount of time. Crystal Cortes is different than you and I. I can't explain it. Is it greed? Is it lust for her? No. Envy. Envy is Brenda Delgado's deadly sin. Now, don't confuse this with jealousy. That's not what this is. You can be jealous of your neighbor's house. You can be jealous of your neighbor's job, of his bank account. That's not what we're talking about. Envy is a different animal. Envy doesn't just make you want that other thing, it makes you want to destroy that other thing. That's what was in the heart of Brenda Delgado. Envy. Let's see how this built. Ricky. Following Ricky. Following Ricky. Right? That's her desire. Maybe it's not just Ricky, it's the relationship with Ricky. That's what her desire is. The thing that she wanted most. She sees that he's moving on. Remember the relationship, right? They're together. They break up in June of 2014. Okay? Then he's moving on, he's dating other people, then they get back together in late 2014. Okay? Salsa dancing. I ran into him. Here, there, right? Back in his life again. Okay? We get up to February, and there's a definitive, well, we broke up somewhat in February. Okay? This is after February. Milan. Okay? She's watching this. This, can you not figure out what this is? Reservation confirmations for a trip. He told you what this was on her phone. That's a receipt for that trip. Okay? Why? Why is it's the envy's building? Okay? Here's a text message that she has on her phone. This is from a series of messages that are on State's Exhibit 105. The blues are Brenda. I love you too. There's so much that I need to tell you. I walked into the same restaurant that he was having dinner with the girl that he's dating. From Patricia. I'm so sorry, Brenda. That must have felt devastating. Crushed is her response. Crushed. Did he tell you he was dating someone else? Not a word. Maybe he told Angelina. Who's Angelina? His sister. We heard about that. I don't know what to think anymore. Thank you, beautiful girl. That means a lot to me. But of course, no one understands me the way you do. That's Brenda. Shh, don't tell Angela or anyone, please. He would hate me for telling you his business. I just love you so much. I promise I won't say anything to Ricky or Angelina or their dad. Okay? She's fixated on this. Her envy is building. This is a text message from Ricky from late May. I'm tired, oh so, but can't sleep. Brenda, want me to come over? I'm driving in 5 minutes away. I don't know, because then I may not stay up even longer. No, we'll go to sleep. I'll help you go. Okay. I just don't want to lead you on from Ricky. No, I'm here for you. That's late May. Okay? Now what happens also, did he tell you in May? He meets Kendra Hatcher. They've had some dates. Remember that? What happens next? June 9th. June 9th, ladies and gentlemen, Ricky sends a text over to Brenda that says, "Hi Brenda, I've started to date someone that I actually really like. This obviously means that several steps are now mandatory. Getting the rest of your items, changing your mailing address, establish your own phone line. This should all happen months ago, but now it matters more, and I would like it to occur within the next week. Thank you for your understanding." Ladies and gentlemen, we have September 2nd of 2015 as Kendra Hatcher's death day. I submit to you that it's June 9, 2015. That is the day that this all started happening. This is the reason why I have met this family. This is the reason why we are now sitting here together. Because of this. What happens shortly thereafter? Boom. Shortly thereafter. That is not from his page. That's what they set up here. No. That's her page. Her open page. She puts that on there. She put other pictures on there. You heard about that. Trips that they had taken. What is that doing to this envious soul? What is that doing to her? It's driving her crazy. Right? Now, did it work? Almost worked. Look at this. This is from Angelina Paniagua. Hi, Brenda. I'm Dallas under August. This is on September 3rd. Remember, we have to subtract some time, okay? 5 hours from that. I'm in Dallas, obviously on horrible circumstances after the murder. Ricky said he's reached out to you. Hi, Angelina. Yes, I'm deeply sorry. What can I do? That's from Brenda's phone. Thank you. Right now, nothing. Maybe later we can coordinate food. Ricky told you that. There was some coordination of food. He has nothing here. I'm so worried about him. Brenda, I can't imagine. Please let me know. I live 1 block away. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Brenda, what is he doing? We're on the couch. He's just in complete shock, sad. What kind of person would do this? Brenda, seriously, terrible. I'm glad you are there. Thanks. Kind of feel weird asking, but would you mind getting some groceries? of course, don't feel weird. She's trying to insert herself back into that life. That envious soul is trying to now reinsert herself back into Brenda's life. This has worked. He's gone, and they're reaching out to her. Envy. Envy. Can they all be wrong? They want you to believe that this is just some concocted plan that Crystal has with Kristopher Love. Can they be wrong when Moses Martinez comes in here and says that no, she wanted to hurt him? Can Jennifer Calderon Escobar be wrong when she says she wanted me to do something to Kendra Hatcher and to Ricky? Can Roberto Menendez be wrong when he says that she brought me over to her apartment and drove around that time, and she wanted a gun from me at some point in time? Can Milton Martinez be wrong? Can he? Can he? No. Crystal Cortes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to insult your intelligence and ask you to come up here and to believe Crystal Cortes for what she's told you to do. Obviously not. Obviously not. We have to do things in order to corroborate Crystal Cortes. And what have we done? We've corroborated. She said she was with Brenda Delgado the morning before, down there in Surrey Road. Phone records, corroboration. They said they were together that morning. Did they even talk about this? Why are the three of them at Jack in the Box that morning? Do they have any explanation whatsoever for that? Do they have any explanation for the silencer video? Other than to say that it's being recorded. So she's still in the car. Her phone's in the car. They're still talking about a silencer for a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson. A .40 caliber Smith & Wesson. While she's driving on her own phone. Right? Why are they just talking about it? So let me get this straight. Well, there's Crystal and Chris at the time of at 11:30 that day. What do we have next? 11:42:55. There's the Jeep. It's all corroborated. What she said happened. You remember they spent so much time with Crystal Cortes about how much lies she had to Detective Barnes back in 2015. We all know that on September 21st, I had a conversation with her of 2018. And then again on October of 2018. And then we know she testified in Kristopher Love's trial. And then we know that she's testifying here. Any time that they've tried to trip her up on anything, did they ever talk to her about anything she talked to us about since September 21st of 2018? No. She has stayed completely consistent since September 21st of 2018. And it all matches the evidence that has been collected for 3 and 4 years in this case. They don't ask her a single thing about that. They have all my notes. Anything I've ever talked to her about, they have them listed off. She told you about going over to the exchanging the Jeep that night. And you may not be able to see that. I can see it. I've watched it 7,000 times, so I can see it. If you need to see it again, we can show you. That's them right there, standing up there at that Jeep, exchanging, looking at her purse, digging through her purse. What do we get? What do we get? You can't see that being Brenda Delgado? You don't think that's Brenda Delgado? That's what they just said. We can't tell the person's looking away. Can you see her? That's Brenda Delgado sitting right there. Crystal Cortes. And the money. It's her right there. Look at Crystal right there. She not look like she is living life with the person that she desires to be with. Jose Ortiz. Not a word. Not a word about him. Right? If Brenda was rich, then Kendra was wealthy. That theme, okay? Let's go and rob Kendra Hatcher because Crystal knows that she's this wealthy, well-to-do dentist in Dallas. And I'm gonna go and find Kristopher Love, and we're gonna get our big payday going after Kendra Hatcher. That's their theory. That's what they've hung their hat on, okay? So there's their Jeep at 11:51:53, sitting there waiting and stalking. There's a Bentley going that way and a BMW coming this way. Wouldn't that be a better payday, one of those two? Maybe, if you're just kind of guessing. Here they are at 7:03, 45 minutes before they killed Kendra Hatcher. That's a Lamborghini leaving. Hey, I think if I was putting this together, I'd go after the Lamborghini guy. Right? No. Here they are. They're going to follow in a Mercedes-Benz to go park and wait for the 2007 Toyota Camry to park. Lies. We've already heard them. Went straight to Carrollton, to Detective Barnes, lie. Went straight home, lie. Don't keep up with the dating relationship of Ricky, lie. Crystal was driving her BMW, lie. Crystal borrowed the Jeep, lie. Did not know who Kendra was, big lie. Didn't follow Ricky, bigger lie. There was no plan, biggest lie of all. They want to say don't believe Crystal Cortes because she is lying to you, and because she is lying to you because she is involved in this, then what are they telling you about their own client? I never talked about this. Flight. Why'd she leave? Is it really because Detective Barnes started asking her some tough questions and she had to get out of there? She gets out of jail on the 5th, and she leaves on the 6th? And gone.
Objection to no evidence is when she...
The FBI guy came in and told you that she left on the 6th.
No one has testified when she specifically went to Mexico.
I'm going to trust the FBI on this. All right? And then this whole talk about, well, we were working on getting her back in there, right? And she was going to turn herself in April, after she's on the top 10 list. You know, the wicked man flees when no one pursueth, but the righteous stand bold like the lion. She fled because she knew things had changed. When she went in that morning to talk to Detective Barnes and say, yeah, I'll come in and talk to you, sure. She thought that the Jeep was hidden, that Jose was going to stand up for her, and she got a text that says, it's all clear. We're in the clear, that she deleted. That's what she went into Detective Barnes. Oh, no, I don't know anything about this. No. She didn't know Jose had already spilled the beans. And then when the lies started twisting around, and then Crystal gets down there, and now she knows her goose is cooked, she takes off. What she thought she'd have to do eventually, should things go bad, she did it. We've seen this. I won't play for me, but you all remember that. You remember what you saw on that scene? You remember that they wait, that's not her car, it's just the other car goes in. And you remember that figure that goes down underneath that arrow. And that figure goes straight down there. And why did we talk about the autopsy and the trajectory of that bullet, and that it goes through the back of her head and out here and down? And that the bullet casing flies off into the inside of the car? To show you that if this was just a robbery, that all that he would have to do, at that point in time, she is cowering. She is down. No, no, no! Remember? The Hashem Syed heard that, heard those screams. Remember that? If she's down saying no, 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 the robbery could be committed at that time. You grab her purse and go. She has gunpowder on the back of her hands because she was executed like that, down, and the bullet goes here, here, and out. The only way that can happen is if she's down cowering. It's an execution. It's not a robbery. The robbery was the ruse, so that it looked random. You get a random Jeep with paper tags. You get two people that's not you to go and do this, to execute her and make it look like a robbery. Ladies and gentlemen, we haven't talked about her in 5 days. This saint, Kendra Hatcher. All she wanted to do was to live her life and to start a new life with a new guy. That's all she wanted to do.
Time, Mr.
Thank you, Judge. That's all she wanted to do. And when this envious woman put to mind to execute her, she stole from all of us. She stole from you, she stole from me, she stole from all of us. Find her guilty, because she is guilty. Thank you.
Members of the jury, we stand in recess until you reach unanimous verdict.
All rise.
on the charge.
You have to stand here.